Welcome back to Microeconomics with me, Professor Ludwinski. What we're covering here is Unit 6, which is about the theories around firm behavior, in particular thinking about perfect competition. So what we'll be doing in this video is thinking about longer run adjustments and the relationship between the market and the firm and how they impact each other. In particular, we'll be thinking through different scenarios. The first one, what happens in the market and for the firm when there's exactly zero economic profit? And that word economic is going to be a key word. It's economic profit, not just accounting and monetary profit, as we distinguished earlier in our video talking about different types of cost. Then we'll talk about what happens in the market and to the firm when we have positive profits. We'll talk about what happens when we have negative profits in two different ways. One, when they're negative including fixed cost, and the second, even worse, when it's negative even before we look at fixed cost. So it's negative just on the variable side of cost. With the models that we've been developing, we're going to be able to speak to the number of firms in the market. We'll talk to the market supply curve as a whole, the equilibrium quantity in the market, the equilibrium price, which, as we've emphasized for a perfectly competitive firm, is equal to the firm's marginal revenue. We'll be able to speak to the quantity an individual firm makes, the level of the firm's marginal cost, and where average total cost ends up. Right? So 7 different things we're going to speak to in these different scenarios. And as a preview, I'm going to expect that after going through this unit and studying and asking me questions and doing things in class, that you are able to, in each of these scenarios, speak to all of these 7 things as well. Right? So make sure that you do pay attention and get yourself really clear on these concepts. So let's start with our first scenario. And we'll be asking the question, what happens next? In particular, we're thinking about the long run in terms of entry and exit into this industry. Okay. So here we are. We're sitting on zero profit. How do we know that we're at zero profit? Right? If I gave you this on an exam, what is the firm's profit? What would you do to figure it out? Right? Well, we'd look here and see that price minus average total cost, well, is 0. There's no profit. Profit 0. The other thing is I put this Q star in here. I emphasize that's where we'd be best off producing. It's possible that I could not put it in there and you'd have to find it. And could we do better? Well, let's go left and right and see, could we potentially do better? Right? If we produced less, well, now the price is less than average total cost. We're getting a loss, a negative profit. If we produced more, once again, the price is less than average total cost. Right? We are getting a negative profit or a loss. This is the best we can do with this market setup. So what happens? What happens next? Is there an incentive to enter and exit? That's what we're going to be meaning in this unit here, this part of the unit when we're talking about what happens next. Well, there's actually no incentive. Right? There's no incentive to exit because the profit includes the entrepreneurial's extra money, right? Leaving to kind of quit the business, work at a different job, wouldn't give you extra money. That zero economic profit includes the opportunity cost, right? So there's actually no incentive to exit. And there's no incentive for other people to enter as well because there's no economic profit to be had. So if there's no incentive to enter, and there's no incentive to exit, where does that leave us? What happens next? Well, in this particular example, what happens next is nothing. Now I want to bring this back to this idea of this is therefore a stable point. There's no reason to change. There's no force unless something changes in the market that's going to make this change. And what we've called these stable points before are equilibrium. So this is a long run equilibrium, with the long run meaning entry and exit. So with profit equaling zero, economic profit to emphasize, we're at a long run equilibrium. Now let's move on to our next scenario, positive profits. And this time we'll speak to these. Last time, nothing happened. So maybe something's going to happen with positive profits. So here is our scenario set up here where we have a higher price leading to a price that is higher than average total cost, which means we have a positive profit. Now the question is there an incentive to exit or enter? Here, with positive profits, meaning money above and beyond what you could be getting elsewhere, there's an incentive for people who hear about this to follow those economic profits, to abandon what they're doing and switch to this industry. Right? So what we're going to have is entry. With the more firms entering, that is going to not first impact an individual firm, it's going to impact the market. Right? So what happens at first is that the market supply as firm enters shifts to the right. With this shift to the right, that has happened in the market, we are no longer in market equilibrium at this particular price. Right? So the other question that we're going to want to ask is, well, how long do people keep entering? Right? When does entry stop? So with this increased market supply, we're going to have downward pressure on the price. That downward pressure is going to continue to drive that market price down until there's no longer an economic profit, right? Until the price has been driven down such that price equals the average total cost, and there's no longer a profit. And in fact, this is only going to happen when our price equals marginal cost equals the average total cost. It's only going to happen at the minimum of average total cost. So that covers what happens to supply, and now we talked about what happens to the market price. Now let's talk about what happens to how much each producer makes. Right? All right, so we had that entry. We had we're going to talk about what happens to market quantity and firm quantity. So we had an increase entry. That's going to clearly increase the market output and the market quantity supplied. With a particular firm, the thing that matters here is the lowering of the equilibrium price. With that lowering of the equilibrium price, individual firms who were previously participants are going to produce less. Right? So we have this decrease in the quantity. So to summarize, we started from this graph where we had a positive profit. And in fact, I could take out this profit portion and you should be able to see that price is higher than average total cost, which would tell you that profit is positive. You should also be able to, I should be able to take out this equilibrium quantity, and you should be able to find with a price at this level, that would be the equilibrium quantity. So I could take out two things from this graph, and you still should be able to speak to these following several things. Right? We said that with a positive profit, we were able, the number of firms increased. Now, I don't want you to just sit back and memorize all these 7 things and what happens in the different scenarios. That might kind of help in the short term in tests, but I want you to understand the flow, the story that is going on here, and understand the theoretical basis for the impact and the reaction. So the number of firms increased because people are entering to chase profits. Right? What that did is shifted the supply curve to the right. That increased equilibrium market quantity. It also decreased equilibrium market price, which is market revenue. That decreased market price led to a drop in firm quantity as we slid along that marginal cost curve. And we also have a decrease in marginal cost as we slide down the marginal cost curve. Average total cost as well decreases. So we covered positive profits. Now let's speak to what happens with negative profits here. Now, first we'll look at the negative profit where it's only a loss if we're including fixed cost. So here we have our market supply and demand functions and our firm cost structure. And what we can see here is, well, we know it's a loss because at the profit maximizing quantity, price is below average total cost. Now, while it's below average total cost, it's still above average variable cost. And that is the distinction I'm making here between 3 and 4. Okay. So we have this negative profit in this particular industry. Is there an incentive to enter or exit? Yes, the incentive is you could be doing better elsewhere. So the economic profit being less than 0 probably means that your opportunity cost implies that there is an opportunity out there where you could be making more money. So in this scenario, we should eventually exit. Right. If the price was below variable cost, well, you should actually exit right away. Right? So here we have economic losses. With those economic losses and exit, our short-run supply curve is going to be shifting to the left. Right? Now again, we ask the question when entry stopped. Now let's ask the question, how much exit happens? When does this stop? Right? We have this decreased market supply. This pushes upward pressure on the price, and this continues, the exit continues, and the upward pressure on price continues until price pushes economic profits to 0, right? So we continue to increase price and have exit right up until we have 0 economic profit. And in fact, that's going to happen when price equals marginal cost, and when marginal cost is going through average total cost for there to be 0 profits. And what we're seeing again is that the price is going to be a minimum of average total cost. So we talked about how we had this exit. What happens to market quantity? Well, with this decreased exit, we have decreased quantity. With the increased price, what happens to firm quantity? Well, we slide on the firm supply curve. We have an increase in firm quantity. So we have a decrease in market quantity through the exit, but each individual firm is making more, right? And so this is sort of where we have economies of scale. They're making more and they're driving down their average total cost. So from this graph, and again, we could have taken out negative profit. You should know how to calculate profit. We could take out quantity, right? So all we needed is to know that this is the price. We could find 7 things. We could know what is going to happen long term to number of firms. We're going to have exit. Those are going down. We could know what's going to happen to the market supply curve. With that exit, we're going to have a decrease or a shift to the left in market supply. The market equilibrium quantity is going to go down, quantity supplied, and the equilibrium price is going to go up. Right? With that increase in the price, each firm is going to, that stays in, is going to slide along this cost curve and increase their quantity, increases marginal cost, and actually decreases average total cost. So that was scenario 3, negative profits, when fixed cost is included. So we can see price here is above the average variable cost, but below average total cost. And now we're going to get into scenario 4, negative profits when we're not even including fixed cost. So what we have here is the situation where price is below average variable cost, and that is a negative profit. It's below average total cost. Total cost is what we use to calculate profit. And again, we can ask that question, is there an incentive to enter or exit? And just like before with a negative profit, there's an incentive to exit, but it's not an eventual exit, it's exit now. This price being below variable cost means, to use the example of selling coffee, that for every cup of coffee that you're selling, you're actually losing money. It's costing you more money for the cup, the beans, and the labor to make the coffee than you're bringing in. And so for every unit being sold here, we're on the margin losing money. Right? And so this is not even including things like rent or the purchase of that coffee machine. If your price is this low, then don't even bother selling coffee. When the price is between the two, above the variable cost, that means you're covering the cost of cups, you're covering the cost of beans, you're covering the cost of labor to make it. What you're not covering is the fixed cost, the cost associated with rent, the cost of actually buying that expensive coffee machine. In this case, maybe you don't renew your lease. You eventually exit. But if your cost is so low that it's below your variable cost, that's when you need to leave today. And so what we'll see in this market is exit, which will be a decrease in the supply curve, a shifting to the left. And we can skip because the story is very similar to what's happening in our example 3 with the negative profit. We have fewer firms because of exit, that shift to the left in the supply curve, equilibrium market quantity going down, equilibrium price going up, firm quantity going up, marginal cost going up, and average total cost going up. So that shutdown immediate condition is that when a firm shuts down in the short run, they're still going to lose out on that fixed cost if it is a sunk fixed cost. And that's the most the firm can lose out on. And the question is, can you do better than that? So the firm should shut down immediately if it's losing that extra money by selling. That's if revenue is less than your variable cost, then shut down. If you can't find a quantity that makes your variable cost less than your price times quantity, than your revenue, then you need to shut down. In other words, this is going to only happen if your price is below the minimum of your average variable cost. You're losing money in that case on every marginal unit of output. So to summarize what we had here, with profit at 0, number of firms didn't change, supply curve didn't change, market quantity didn't change, equilibrium price and marginal revenue didn't change, firm quantity didn't change, marginal cost and average total cost didn't change. This is that long run equilibrium. With profit greater than 0, we saw increases in the number of firms. The market supply curve shifted to the left as firms entered. The equilibrium market quantity increased, and the equilibrium market price was pushed down along with marginal revenue. Firm quantity went down as well, and marginal cost went down. Average total cost went down as well. Now, for the most part, when profit is negative, it's going to be the reverse. Instead of firms entering, firms are going to exit. Instead of the supply curve decreasing, it's going to increase and increasing, it's going to decrease. Equilibrium quantity is going to go down. Almost everything is the reverse story. Right? The one thing that's actually not the reverse story is this average total cost. Both of them go down, and I want to emphasize why this is the case. So everything is moving towards this long run equilibrium here, where profit is zero. And profit is zero where price equals average total cost. Now, price is going to equal marginal cost if the firm is maximizing. So it must be the case that if price equals marginal cost and price equals average total cost, that marginal cost equals average total cost. And that happens at the minimum of average total cost, as we discussed before. And so whether you are having firms enter, when we have a setup like this, where we have firms entering, here where we have firms entering, right, we're going to be driving the price down. Each firm is going to produce a little less. Average total cost is going down. When we have firms exiting, right, exiting is going to drive this price up. With exiting, each firm is going to produce a little more, and average total cost is actually going to go down as well. And so as we move toward that long run equilibrium, we're moving to that minimum of average total cost. I also want to emphasize what happens if we have shifts in demand. So let's say our demand curve increases, right, which pushes the price up. Well, what we saw in our dynamics is with this higher price, right, and a profit where we're having price higher than marginal revenue, we're going to have entry. And we're going to continue to have entry until we drive that price right back down to that minimum of average total cost. So when we're thinking about the longer run dynamics of a perfectly competitive market, changes in supply and demand determine what's going on. Demand, as we saw, changes profitability, drives entry and exit, and in the long run, supply will respond. And in the long run, what we're going to find is that price is going to be at that minimum of average total cost. Right? To have that zero profit condition, remember these are economic profits, not just accounting profits, this must be true. And so price is determined by production curves. Right? These cost curves are the thing that is determining price. Demand is determining equilibrium quantity in our perfectly competitive market. So when we're thinking about the long run supply curve, right, what we saw happen in the long run supply curve with cost curves not changing is that it moved to keep the price the same. And so there's a reason that we have been carrying around this short run market supply curve. And the reason is that in the long run, the supply curve is actually horizontal. Right? There's one price that will clear the market in terms of there not being an incentive for firms to enter or exit. And that price is at the minimum of average total cost. And that's what we call the long run market supply curve. So that wraps up our unit talking about long run adjustments, thinking about that interrelationship between the firm and the market. Next up, what we'll be doing is talking about the assumptions and results of perfect competition, and showing how the results that we demonstrated, how they tie to those assumptions that we introduced very early on. I want you to kind of understand those connections very clearly and be able to make those, understand which of the assumptions are driving what of the conclusions. Well, thank you very much for your time. I hope this was informative and helpful in understanding the material. Leave me a comment or send me a message if you have questions, and hope you take good care and have a great day.